Kyle here from All Media Reviews. Here to do a documentary review on Karen Carpenter I saw over the weekend. Karen Carpenter, Starving for Perfection. So I'll probably go right here. Um, so obviously Karen Carpenter, part of the Carpenters group that was well known in some circles in the late 60s and especially in the 70s, early to mid 70s, throughout the 70s really. And it's been well documented about, through some circles at least, and my wife is a fan of hers, what she went through. So this documentary that came out, because there was a TV movie that was made in the late 80s that told her story. There's been some other documentaries. There's something that was done, I want to say like Amazon or something, in 2016 that I found that you can actually watch, that Richard Carpenter had uploaded to his YouTube channel. I don't know how recently, but at least it says it's Richard Carpenter. I don't know. So I mean it's him, but it's a new sort of updated interviews with a lot of people. Although Richard Carpenter's not interviewed in it, and none of her family members are, I don't believe, but people she knew. So the most kind of, in watching the trailers for it, probably the most sort of interesting thing that struck me, and it proved to be kind of interesting about this documentary, was the fact you had both Olivia Newton-John and Suzanne Summers, who have both passed away, talking about their, friend, of the past, her telling her story, who had passed away. But it talked about anorexia, of course. That's what she was diagnosed with. She lived with it, and talked about Ipecac, how she took Ipecac. That was ultimately what was the source of, what led to her passing. She was taking that, and people didn't know. But there's a lot of good things in the documentary talking about her story. I mean, it's for the most part a traditional style document. They tell her about her upbringing a little bit and her relationship with her brother and her family. How that when she first came up, she really admired her brother. Her brother was learning how to play piano. I don't know if it said one of the family members, the father maybe, but so she was kind of admiring him and wanted to do what he did. And I think they said that initially she didn't want to play piano, but then she liked playing the drums, and so she wasn't a singer. Is a little bit like Jeff Buckley in that she really wanted to be an instrumentalist. She played like jazz, and she was a really good drummer. This was in the early to mid '60s when she was just a youth, and then eventually she started to sing, and they had her do. They're writing some songs and some covers too, and she sang, and it kind of got her more notice. And they talked about how as they got more success, they end up having her eventually come out behind the drum kit, which had its issues but also its benefits. And then eventually they actually did hire a drummer. The drummer was interviewed in the documentary, of course, in this Starving for Perfection. So yeah, I mean, she has a very angelic voice. Very distinct, although there's a couple other singers that remind me of her a little bit, or she reminds me of, or more probably she reminds me of her. I'm not remembering who specifically. I'm not talking about Linda Ronstadt. Linda Ronstadt really was a contemporary of hers, I guess you could say, but kind of got more success later, other than with the Stone Ponies. But I mean, they had a lot of great pop hits, like kind of orchestral, like pop ballads, really. The Carpenters. I mean they kind of get lumped in with the, like, I want to say that like evangelical, conservative value Christian families of Americana or America. I think, what did they say, that they were from out east, like Connecticut? I think it was, maybe not, but eventually they moved to California. Yeah, because they said Richard would have a better chance to pursue his music career there. there's a lot of things too that they went over in the documentary. The other people they interviewed, like Kristen Chenoweth, who's a really good singer herself and actor. Um, let's see here. From the Go-Go's, you had Belinda Carlisle, who I guess maybe struggled with anorexia herself, but uh, Pat Boone's daughter, that was one of the ones, and I guess she developed a friendship with Karen for a while there, and she also was dealing with anorexia, and she kind of got past it, and she was actually offering advice, and toward the end of her life, it looked like she might have actually had a chance to beat it, but it was all sort of not known, and I guess the Ipecac really made a difference, and it was a long-term thing. It wasn't just like she had just been taking it at that point, but I'm trying to think who else. They had some writers. I said Suzanne Summers, and I was looking at the credits here on IMDb. Bob James, Carney Wilson was the other, the daughter of Brian, who struggled with, I guess, bulimia or whatever, but of Wilson Phillips. Carol Burnett, who sang with her on one or two of those sort of those variety shows, because the Carpenters had their own at one point, and then, Olivia Newton-John sang with her a duet at one point, but who was the other one I'm thinking of? Suzanne Summers was on one of the variety shows with her, so, it's definitely a good documentary from a standpoint of, I saw it as, I shouldn't mention, it's part of Sound Unseen, which is a Minneapolis, Twin Cities based music film festival, sort of, it's not just a festival exactly, I'd call it a organization that promotes music-based movies, mostly independent, a lot of documentaries, and then they have sort of a festival of sorts at this time of year every year. The Apples in Stereo, or the Elephant Six documentary I saw was part of it last year, although I saw it later, but this thing I think probably will come out sometime early next year, the Karen Carpenter, The Starving for Perfection, but it is about her, but it's also about the history of the Carpenters to a lot of extent, their family, the mother. The thing is, I was reminded a little bit of how, like Joe Jackson was on their kids. I was thinking about Brian Wilson, the Wilson brothers from the Beach Boys' father, and like a little bit with Ike and Tina. Sort of the forced, almost abusive relationship of making music. Now, it wasn't to that severity, and even in the '89 film with Louise Fletcher, who plays the mother, their mother, I forget her name. It wasn't to that degree, but she definitely had an influence on the direction of her life, and she died when she was only 32, so if she wouldn't have died, there was definitely a lot of pressure on her. She put her pressure on herself, of course, not just body, but just as a musician, and they had this hectic schedule, like a lot of the musicians at the time. They were just trying to, the record label and put out music and continue to like promote and get hit singles and stuff like that. But I think there was to some degree, though, that the family pressure was contributed to what happened to her. But she wanted what's best for her, and she loved her, even though they had this one interview they showed that's like, well, she knows I love her and everything like that, to the mother, to the parents. They show a scene in the movie, the television movie, which I don't know how accurate, but the interesting thing about that television movie, which she was interviewed in it, Cynthia Gibb, she was interviewed in this documentary, who played Karen Carpenter. They actually shot that documentary at the actual home, the actual Carpenter's home in California, and the paramedics that take her on the stretcher, they used in the movie that actually took her. So she was wearing Karen's clothes. There's all these really, like, almost sort of, it wasn't a documentary, but like larger, like art imitating life, art, tracing the footsteps of life rather than just a sort of a depiction or whatever, an adaptation, a reimagining of the story. It was probably pretty close, but not entirely. Again, I don't know, the influence of the it a tragic story, of course. She was a highly talented, had a gorgeous voice, and a very, terrific, musician, and someone who probably could have flourished throughout the rest of her life. Depends. We don't know. That's the age-old question when you have people that pass away, especially at a younger age, at 32 in this case, in Karen Carpenter. What could have been? What would she have done? I kind of wonder if she at least would have gone back to playing jazz, because I think as they're telling the story of the history of the Carpenters, those hit singles they had in the early to mid '70s, and they did a sci-fi like sort of prog album. Because I know they were fans of klaatu. That's interesting. I think they covered a klaatu song, the Carpenters, but they didn't do all originals. They did their share of covers, a lost art from the '70s, but I think by the time it was like the late '70s, Richard had some problems himself. He had to go to rehab. I remember seeing something about that, and it was actually shown in the made-for-TV movie from '89. She went off and was working on a solo album, but then it didn't come out when she shelved it when she got married and all this stuff, and that was the other tragic thing about her. She really wanted to fall in love, and she did marry this guy, but it's a real estate guy or something, but it didn't work out. But I kind of wonder if she would have had more freedom potentially, and she might have gone back to doing some jazz, just because she was a drummer, a little like Bill Bruford, or different people that do the group thing, the band thing. I mean, presumably she might have still continued to make music with Richard or collaborate with other people. They had Brian Wilson really admired her. She might have worked with Brian Wilson at some point, although he had his own issues and substance abuse issues himself. So, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely touching. I mean, some people in the audience were probably in tears at points, because it's a tragic loss, a very admired, appreciated, maybe even more so since she died. That angelic voice and the musician and the sort of the icon of sorts. I mean, again, I think when she was alive, she probably was famous, but she's become more she's reached more people, like as they say, since she's been gone. It's been 42 years now, or 41 years. And the fact that she was going to probably do other genres. That whole thing about the Carpenters being like, you'd find their vinyl records at like thrift stores and in small towns and like at the church, and it's all like proper, nice, clean, acceptable, very polite, uplifting, music that, while that has its merits, it maybe doesn't tell the whole scope of someone's life. I mean, that happens a lot where you have people that struggle with their life but make very positive music, and vice versa, actually. But I kind of wonder if she might have ended up doing some other genres. Who knows? I suppose we don't know. Maybe she would have stopped doing music. Maybe she would have done a tour, doing like Kate Bush or something like that. But it's just definitely, there's more sympathy, more is she a martyr? Yeah, in some ways she is, and her influence is still being felt, of course. And it's worth seeing, even if you're just a marginal fan. If you're obviously a fan, you should probably check it out. If you're a fan of the Carpenters, of hers, but it was definitely a very well-made documentary. I don't know who Randy Martin is the person who directed. Randy Schmidt was the writer. And I'm guessing they spent a few years doing this, obviously with people like Suzanne Summers and Olivia Newton-John, who passed away. They were working on this for a while, so this person hasn't done any other real... The Andes Tragedy, 50 years later. Well, okay, so they've done documentaries. Prince, The Final Secret. Now, that might be that's coming out in 2023. That might be worth checking out if it didn't already come out. But yeah, good documentary. There weren't really too many things they didn't show, other than there was nothing with the family, nothing with Richard. They did mention how Richard went on to doing the Carpenters' music with like the London Philharmonic, some orchestra, which I remember hearing about. That was like in 2017 or 2018. But yeah, no, it was definitely worth seeing, and definitely recommended. So one of the house cleaning items, I'm going to get back to the Albums of the Year series probably just in a short while. I'm off tomorrow and Friday. I got some doctor's appointments, but Rush might be getting back together, or getting back together. Geddy Lee has this documentary series, speaking of with bass players. But he also, McCartney, he saw McCartney. There was some quote from Paul McCartney saying he thinks that Rush should, tour. Maybe it was after they did the whole Neil tribute with some of the different drummers that came up. It's ironic how, while Mike Portnoy might not have been the person they would look to play with them. He's now got his day job, his primary day job back. If Portnoy was offered the gig, that would be a real serious twist of fate. But I don't know if it will happen. But you know, Getty, he's right. He's doing wrote this new book, this memoir, and Alex got Envy of None. But I kind of wonder after the last few years, and Neil's obviously gone. Even before Neil passed away, they kind of wanted to still do stuff. You know, life is short. You only got so much time. We may see either some version of Rush happen at some point, maybe just one show. I don't know. Or maybe they'll record some music. You never know. Maybe they'll record some music not under the Rush name. We don't know. We've always wondered about that, but that's kind of interesting. It's come up the last few days. So, yeah, we're on November 14th. So album of the year stuff's coming up. Television, movies, books, and stuff like that. I haven't been able to go over. There's a movie with Nicolas Cage I kind of want to see called Dream Scenario. That's coming out. The Garfield movie's coming out. Which I want to see. It looks good. It has Chris Pratt. I got some reservations about him. He lives from Minnesota, but it looks cute. We're going to end up going to that. And there's stuff coming out, music-wise, of course, Polyphonic Spree this week. A few weeks, Peter Gabriel and Giant Sky, and like I said, the Albums of the Year stuff. And I'll get back to doing all this stuff with the Albums of the Year. I'm projecting, going back, I'm on 1971 now, probably 3 to 4 a week if I can maintain, some semblance of a, production on this. Sometime in March I'll probably get done with it and put it to bed, and then think about at some point doing it again when I'll do it more thoroughly. I don't know, but anyway, yeah, thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. We'll see you next time.